All right, full disclosure, I've already had this entire column apart, at least at least twice, messing with it. And I actually, if you're over on gbodyforum.com, I did a how-to pictorial on this exact column, tearing it all the way down and tightening up those tilt column bolts down in there. And I wanted to do it because I haven't done one of these in a while, I'll be honest. I know how to do them, but it's been a moment or two since I've done one. Okay, years. So what I did was, the first time I took a bunch of pictures and I went through it real slow and made sure I knew what I was doing. So that way, when I show this video to you now, I don't look stupid and I don't make a bunch of mistakes that you possibly could make. I want to make sure I get it right so you get it right. So it's all gone through and I've put it all back together. So I'm refreshed and I know what I'm doing. And I tell you what, when I took this column apart, when I bought it, I drove it, many states to get from where I bought it back to my house. And the column was, I could tell that there was a little bit of movement in the wheel because of those loose bolts. So I knew I was going to have to do this sooner or later, but I had no idea it was as bad as it was. When I took it apart for the pictorial, there was one of the bolts that was literally just sitting in the hole. There wasn't one thread engaged on it. And the other two were super loose as well. So there was only one bolt really at the bottom on this side that was actually screwed in most of the way and holding this thing together. And if that one hadn't done it, who knows what would have happened. But it was bad. I couldn't believe how bad it was. So anyway, enough of me talking. I think what we're going to do is tear right into this thing, and I'm going to show you step by step how to do it. And when we're done, I think you're going to go, I can do that. That's what I hope. All right, let's get cracking. So we're starting off with the column up here on the bench. I've actually kind of did a makeshift mount to hold it up here. So it's going to be it's going to probably be a little wobbly just because the bottom of the shaft isn't held on by the rest of the steering gear. But I wanted to do it this way so now you can really get in there and see exactly all the parts that need to be taken off to do this. So a couple things to remember. When you're starting this, I like to have something over here to the side and I lay all my parts out in order as they come off. So that way when I'm done, boom, 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 everything goes back on. You don't miss anything and you don't miss any nuts or bolts, and that's very important. I like to use a towel because a towel kind of holds stuff in place and things don't walk, crawl, or roll away. So anyway, so let's get right into this. So for the horn button, everybody looks at it. How does this thing come off? It's just got 3 ears on the inside that hold it in. And then your horn button is on the inside. This is held in a little plastic holder. So you just push that in and turn it counterclockwise a little. Comes right out. Piece of cake. So we'll sit that off to the side. Next you've got this little keyway on the end of the shaft, and then we've got to get our nut off. Snap ring pliers, easy enough. Just got to flex it enough to get it out. There's our keyway. That goes off to the side. So this is 13/16. And okay, truth be told, full disclosure, I've had this entire column apart already. So a couple things are going to be a little loose compared to what you would do. There's the nut. You see those 2 marks? You have a mark on the shaft and there's a witness mark up here on the steering wheel. I've never seen one of these come from the factory that didn't already have those marks in them. Okay, so this helps you line up your steering wheel with the shaft when you put this back together. If for some reason you're taking yours apart and you don't see these witness marks, you need to take a chisel and put them in there. So that way the wheel goes back on the same way that it came off. So that way your steering is going to be straight because you're not messing with anything else except pulling this off and digging down inside. So keep that in mind. 1/2-inch bolts, 9/16 for the center for the puller. So again, mine's going to come off a lot easier than yours because I've already had it apart, so I didn't press it all the way back down. But that's pretty much it. So the pulley puller was our first specialty tool. Here comes the second. This is a lock plate puller. This plate, called the lock plate, has indentations all on the inside, and I'll show you once we get this thing apart. And there's a pin over here, and when you turn your ignition off, that pin is spring loaded and it puts pressure on it. And then when you turn the steering wheel, when it engages one of those slots, the pin pops out and it holds this in place, so that's what locks your wheel and keeps it from turning. So this has to be pushed in, because if you can see down in there, there is a snap ring that needs to come out. It's a real booger too. You got to use like a seal pick and some small screwdrivers to kind of get down in there and get that thing out. It's a pain in the butt, really. This goes on, presses that down. Let's get this in. 7/8 is the size of the nut on this. And basically what we're doing is cranking this down until I can see, right about there. So now I can see that that snap ring down in there is exposed. So I'm not going to bore you with this, but I'm going to fish that stupid little thing out with a couple of seal picks and a small screwdriver. And then we'll come back and keep moving on from there. Let's loosen this back up. The snap ring is now out. There we go. Pieces off to the side. Let's go ahead and yank this out. The snap ring's going to come right with it. Okay. There's our snap ring. So basically there's these grooves along the shaft. You just get a seal pick down in one of those grooves and angle it, and it kind of pops the one end up, and you can use a screwdriver to kind of pull it up and then just work it all the way around and then pull it out. So that's off to the side. This is our lock plate that has the horn switch in with it. Here it is on the back side. So you can see there's all those divots, and here's the pin right there. And that pin engages those divots and it locks your steering wheel in place. Let's get the lock plate spring out. Set that off to the side. So now here is your turn signal switch on the inside. Okay, that's how that works. And these springs right here are turn signal canceling springs. Now, this is my advice. This is what I do. You don't have to do it, but this is what I do. Anytime I crack open one of these steering columns, I replace these springs, because there is nothing worse, especially if you're doing this for a living, tearing this down, fixing the tilt column or whatever else needs to be fixed, and then you put it all back together, and then a week later someone says, oh, when I hit the right turn signal, after I make the right turn, it doesn't cancel, it just stays on, and I have to manually turn it off. Those canceling springs, these things break all the time. So I always put a new set in every time I do one of these. It's just what I do. It's cheap insurance. There it is right there. Just one of these Dorman help things that comes with a pair of springs. I think what I'll do is I'll wait until I do the assembly, put it back together, and the last thing I'll do is I'll pop those springs in. So now we're going to move on to getting this part out. When you're doing this, more than likely it's going to be in the car. So there is a bracket back here just underneath the dash that holds the steering column to the portion of the dash, and then farther down the back you've got where it actually bolts to the firewall. So that U-shaped bracket that's right here, take that off. That way the steering column can hang down a little bit. And you're going to need to do that because there is this wiring harness that goes with this turn signal switch. And that wiring harness, you need to get it past. There's a little plastic insert back here that it's down inside of. You need to get it out of that, because when you pull this out, if this thing is connected to the steering column where it's supposed to be, it's not going to pull this thing. And you need to have this out and hanging down, because this needs to come out and hang down with it. And then when we get down to the center of the guts, that needs to come down and hang out with it. So if this isn't pulled out far enough, you're just going to be fighting yourself trying to get this stuff out. It's just not going to work, so don't do it. So get this unhooked from underneath, that way you can fish this whole thing out. Same thing with if you've got cruise control. the cruise control switch at the end, there's one wire that's right here at the back of the stalk, and it goes down through the column and all the way down to the bottom, and it is over here. Disconnect that, because those two things are going to have to pull out with the rest of this unit to be able to get it done, and there's like another set of wires down here. Disconnect all those, because you're going to need to feed that stuff out. I'm talking too much about this, but you're going to make your life horrible and miserable if you don't do that, because this thing isn't going to come out far enough, and you're going to fight the rest of it, and you're probably going to break something. So don't do that. Okay, for me, I'm actually replacing this turn signal stalk. This one is old, the plastic is cracking, and the chrome on it is starting to, I just popped a big hunk of it off. So the chrome's starting to peel off of this. There's a big hunk I just broke off with my hand. Anyway, I don't like the cruise controls on these G-bodies. They're nice, but it's like this big, huge, clunky vacuum port thing that's out in front of the carburetor, and it just looks hideous to me. And honestly, I'm going to use my big foot for the cruise control, so don't want it. So I found this, also from Help. It's a turn signal stalk. Now, this is just for your pulse wipers and your washer. No cruise control. So there's no wires. So when this comes out, it's never going back, and this is what I'm going to put in its place. So I like that. A lot cleaner install too. All right. Oh, if you run into a situation where you just need to replace the stalk, okay, you take a little bit of mechanics wire and you hook around this connector, and then when you take the stalk off, feed it out nice and slow, and then run up through the harness down in there with the mechanics wire hooked to this, and run it all the way out to the mechanics wire comes out the end. Then you take your brand new one, hook your mechanics wire onto that, and then run it right back down. Take the mechanics wire, pull it from this side until you get the whole wiring back down through the harness. Easiest way to do it, no fuss, no muss, and then boom, you're back in business. And you probably did it in less than 15 minutes. So there's 3 Phillips screws in here, and there's also the Phillips that holds the stalk on. Now, you're going to need to hit your right turn signal, because you need to get to this one screw up here. Forgive my hands, but it's the only way I can get this off. So, need to get that screw out. That goes right in line with everything else. And then now we can move this back, and we'll get the rest of our screws out, and then this switch will be free. Also, this little arm that connects this together goes in a groove on the inside. That also must come out. So we'll get that loose, and then this just pulls right out. So I put the screw back in the hole to keep that together, so I know that's where that came from. You've got your hazard switch over here on the side. That's connected in with this. It's a small Phillips screw, so you'll need a smaller Phillips screwdriver. And we're going to take that loose, and that comes out. There. Okay, so there's the hazard switch. If you've ever taken one of these apart, there is a spring on the inside. So when you take this off, be careful, because if you have this pushed in and you let it go, it's going to go that way somewhere, and you'll have to find it. So make sure that you don't lose any portion of that. Okay, so we'll fish that out a little bit. Now, like I was saying, you want plenty of room for this thing to hang way down, because when this part of the column comes off, you're going to need to get some room to hang that down. So this little bad boy is the chime switch, so we're going to just grab that with the pair of pliers here, and it comes right out. Now, this has a little black clip that goes on the outside of this, but because the ignition cylinder is still in, that thing gets trapped. But this needs to come out, or you can't get to the screw here to get your cylinder out. So let's take out this small screw. This is a Torx 20, by the way. And it's more like a pin. It's more like a pin with threads on the end. So this pin basically holds your cylinder in place. Let's put else. And then no fuss, no muss, this comes right out. Piece of cake. This little green guy right here, that is what holds that spring in place and it keeps him from coming out. So let's remember that. So now that that is out, we can actually go in here and grab this spring. Now this little guy is delicate and it's going to get hung up in there. So be patient with it when it comes out. Don't just start yanking on this thing because there's a chance you're going to break it. Don't want to do that. So there's that little guy right there. Now when it goes back in, you're going to put both of these in at the same time. So let's get our switch up here. This little edge on the back sits in like that. So there you go. Let me see if I can angle it so you can see it. So that is how that is held in place, and it's going to push right in like so. So keep those two together, keep them off to the side so things don't get messed up. So now we've got our cylinder out, we've got our buzzer switch out. There's this race cap, because you've got an inner and outer race with bearings in here. So this cap is next, so that comes out. So there's 3 of these silver Torx 30 bolts. Those need to come out. Also, come over here, we're going to need to take out our tilt column lever. Keep this little guy handy because you're going to need it later on. So I'm going to put that right down there. Stalk can stay right in. It's not going to bother it at all. So we're going to get this one Torx 30 out. I already took 2 of them out and I've loosened up the third. No sense having you waste a lot of time watching me take nuts and bolts. Okay, so with that out, we're going to take off our lock housing cover, as the factory calls it. So we're going to pull that right out. And then now you can just hang that right down and the whole thing stays. Now, this part is the column housing cover end cap, factory name. There's this little guy right down here. I don't know if you can see this. This is going to fall out when you take this off, so don't freak out because I'm going to show you exactly how to put this back in. But this is, on these cars, when you click the stalk, this is pushing this in, and this is your high beam and low beam switch. Hear that clicking? Okay. When it goes back together, when we get to this point, hold it like this and check to make sure that you have this seated correctly. You don't have that clicking, you know something's wrong. Don't go any further, fix that, and then start going. Last thing you want to do is get this entire thing together and find out that something has gone horribly wrong inside and you have to tear it all back apart. So I'm going to show you as we go. Once everything is torn down, I fix those 4 bolts on the inside and we put it back together. There are things to check for, and at every single juncture point before we go farther, I check to make sure that linkage and everything is correct. It's very important because it's just, like I said, this isn't real difficult, but it's time consuming. And the last thing you want to do is do it twice. Nobody wants to do anything twice. That's crazy. Okay, so this comes right out. And it's just this cap and then this little piece on the inside. Right? So this is going to fall apart. Don't freak out. We're going to get that back just the way it should be. Okay, with that down and out of the way, you've got, it's already popped down on me. There is this inner race that goes on this upper set of bearings. You want to go ahead and take that out because when this part comes out, this is going to go flying somewhere. So be aware that this is going to come out. Let's get it out now. So put that in line with everything else. So now we remove the steering column housing. What we need to do first, if you've ever pulled the tilt lever without holding on the wheel, they'll slam all the way up. That is because of this spring. This is our tilt lever spring, and you can just use a Phillips screwdriver and get right in on the corners, and you're going to have to put some oomph into this because it's, like I said, it's spring loaded. So you have to push it in, and then we're going to turn counterclockwise to unhook the two teeth and then pull it right out. So let's get some oomph on this. There it is. All right. So this whole guy comes out. There's our spring. Next specialty tool. This is from Lyle, and this is the 940 pivot pin puller. Now, if you notice on this one, and it comes with a spare bolt. The bolt is one size. All right, the whole way through. There is another pivot pin puller where you get to the top and it's this thin bolt, and then it widens at the bottom. So it's like it's two different sizes. And I have heard that that design sometimes will break right at where the transition is between skinny and thick on the bolt. And then that thing is stuck inside your pivot pin. And then people around you get to learn new words. So let's not do that. Get a good tool, all right? I've also seen online people will talk about going and getting grade 8 bolts and nuts and then they'll grab the nut that you use to hold the steering column down, put some washers on that. You can do that, but honestly, for all the hassle, just get the tool, throw it in your toolbox. Next time someone goes, oh, I need to do that, say, hey, wait a minute, I got the pivot pin pull. You want it from me? I can give it to you. Then you become a buddy for someone else. Yeah, that's the way to do that. Okay, so now we can see that our pin is right here. And I want to bring this up while I'm here. That thing with the tooth on it right there, those teeth, that is the switch actuator sector. That gray thing that is connected to goes down inside the column, and it's when you turn the ignition switch on the other side, when you hit your key, this turns and then this arm moves, and it's connected to a pin on the inside here that I'll show you later that's connected to a rod that goes down to where your ignition switch is. It is critical when you put this thing back together that these teeth aren't misaligned. So you can see that groove that outcrop right there is stuck down in. That needs to be in that orientation when you put it back together. Or your ignition switch is not going to be able to go into one of the two positions, and it probably won't start correctly. So make sure that that gets taken care of. Anyway, that is our pivot pin. This is our tool. Tool threads in, and then this cup sits on either side of the pivot pin, and then you just tighten the 1/2-inch nut and it pulls the pin right out. It works very, very well. So this just, like I said, screws in. Usually all you need to do is get it hand tight, and then we'll screw down our 1/2-inch nut, and the cup will fit on either side of the pin. There's a 9/64 Allen I just use on the head just to basically keep this thing stationed in one spot, and then just 1/2-inch wrench and a bunch of wrenching, and it comes right out. Pulls right out. Easy. So now we take out our steering column housing. As you can see, this is our switch on the side. This controls, again, what I showed you earlier. This is your high beam switch. Okay, so this housing has an indent down here. There's an opening where this sticks through. So when you pull this out, you want to rotate it slightly up this way, and that way you can fish this rod through here. Because if you just start yanking on it and you mess up this rod or something, you don't want that either. This is where you're going to need to put your tilt column lever back in. Because there are teeth at the top, and what this will do is as you move this back and forth a couple of times, it's going to let those teeth go, and you'll be able to actually pull this thing out. So let's see if I can do this from a position where you can actually see it happening. So let's get, it's loose now, so we're going to take the column rod back out. Again, we need to worry about this, so we're going to bring this out a little bit. We're going to tilt it just slightly so we can get that rod inside this housing. We don't get that caught on anything, because this has got to come out. That rod stand where it's at. There we go. Yeah, and now we swing right by. Let's take a look at this real quick. You can see, this is what I was talking about. This rod on the inside here. This part goes down inside the housing right here, and there's a switch back here. It's a nub really, but it's connected to a rod, and this is part of your ignition switch. It is easy to put this back together and then have that nub up here not engaged. It needs to be in this hole because this is what controls it. So when that's a critical part, when this goes back together, you got to make sure that that's on the inside and not sitting out here, because you'll never start your car if it's sitting out here. It's going to be messed up for you. Sorry. So we're going to let that hang. This is a perfect time too. If you've got, see if I can show you this. If you've got some dry ball bearings in there, if that thing is starting to dry out on you, there's a perfect time to add a little bit of extra grease to it. Okay, so here we are. There are the offending bolts right down in here. Those four are, this is what all this is about, trying to get to those stupid things. All right, now they're a special socket that you're going to need to get for that. It is like a reverse E8 socket, and it's like basically it's a reverse Torx. So what I recommend, and I'll tell you this right now, this is the second time I'm in this column. So when I came in the first time, this bolt right here, which I've actually taken out and put red Loctite on and put it back in, that bolt was just literally sitting there. I grabbed a pair of pliers and there was no threads connecting that. It was just sitting in the hole and just pulled it right out. That's how loose these are. And it looks like, I'm not sure, but it looks like somebody has been in here before, because this bottom Torx thing looks mangled a little bit. And I tried to get the socket on it the first time when I was in here, and I couldn't get the stupid socket on it. So I'm going to have to mess with that and maybe file, there might be a burr or something on there. I'm going to try to file it down so I can actually get the socket on. And it looks like this one is tight. So it could be what happened was someone's done this before, didn't use Loctite, just tightened them up, and I think maybe over torqued this one and maybe spun the socket on the head, or used something similar to an E8 to try to get these things tightened and might have stripped it or something. I don't know. But I'm going to have to work on that. So here's what you need to do. When you get in and you get to this point, they're going to be loose. That's why we're here, right? What you do is you take your E8 socket, tighten all four of them down. Don't have to crank on them, but tighten them down so they're all tight. And then one at a time, take it out, clean it off, Loctite it, and then put it back in. And do that to every single one at a time. If you take all four out, you've just loosened the whole thing up, and who knows what happens then. You don't want that. One at a time, please. Good and tight. So yeah, I don't know what that was, because all the bolts were dry. It didn't look like there was anything on it. Why would someone go all the way into this thing and not Loctite these bolts? And it's beyond me, I don't think. So I'm wondering if it was just when it was tightened down at the factory, this was like an enthusiastic torque on that one, and it just it messed up the heads. It was just enough to where I could take the socket and it sort of fit, but you could see there were some like marks on it from where it got a little boogered up. So I was just able to use a hammer and I tapped the socket down onto it and got that one out. Loctited it, put it back in, and I was able to get the socket off. And didn't damage the socket, just kind of like straightened up the thread a little bit, or the head on that. And then I did the other two, so now all four of them Loctited. Is that a word, Loctited? Anyway, this is never going to come loose again, not with that red Loctite in there, so I'm very happy with that. Now, it is just, where's that at? It is just the same procedure in reverse. There's a couple little special things I'm going to have to show you because there's a little nub over here we got to make sure that we get right, and we got to make sure that we get everything keyed right for the ignition. So on our steering column housing, we have what the factory calls a switch actuator rack, which is this little guy I was talking about. Peekaboo, look at him. That is what you need to get correct when you put it back in. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So let me lean this over here so you can see this. This rod up here, this rod is the mechanical actuator that hits your ignition switch down here on the column. So when you turn the key, this actually rotates a gear inside here I was talking about and pushes this column, and that's what actually starts the car. That's how people get a hold of your car, by messing with this stuff down here. So let's look. So down here, you can see that little nub back there. When this thing comes apart, sometimes what will happen is this little guy will get pushed back, and then what will happen is you'll put this on, and that rack will actually be in front of that thing and not over top of it, and then your ignition is never going to work right. You're never going to get the car started because it's not actually physically pushing it. So before we put the housing back together, I'm going to grab this guy and I'm going to move him forward all the way to the front, right? So now with that to the front, that gives me a better chance of slipping that rack over top of this and making sure that this is properly engaged, because it has to go down in that slot right there or it's not going to work. All right, so we've got that moved forward as much as possible, and then when we bring this up, we can actually get that in. Okay, let's see if we can't get the steering column housing back on. So as I was saying before, this rod has to go inside, and we can clock it a little bit. Yeah, just to get that high beam in there. That's good. Now we can move it back. We've got to get this little guy here over top of that nub so it's down where it's supposed to be. So now we'll be able to actuate. Ah, that's him. That's him right there. Okay, so then we put, there it is, put our tilt column together. We got to get our rod back in here. So then we kind of jostle this around to be able to actuate those fingers. Ah, look at that. Get this bad boy right up where it's supposed to be. I think that got it. Now we look and make sure that our holes for the pins are lined up, and it looks like they are. Nothing binding. Looks like that is right on the shaft where it's supposed to be. Okay, let me move this because I want to show you something real quick. All right, so what I've done is I've taken both of the pivot pins and I've just pushed them in by hand. So they're not pressed, but they're in place, so they're holding this whole housing together. Now we want to make sure that this whole mechanism is working correctly. So you can see it's clocked correctly, so it's down in that notch where it should be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the ignition cylinder and I'm going to just put it in here freehand. And what I'm looking for is this thing to actually function correctly. So when I'm turning it, it's going through the click, so it's now in run. And then if I click it forward, this is your start motion, and it should spring back. Yes. And then accessory, and then off. This isn't right. Get this right. This rod right here, that isn't functioning correctly. Stop and get that right. Well, we've got it right, so now we can move on. Now that we're sure that that functions correctly, we're just going to go and tap these bad boys right in. Then we're going to put our race back in. Let me turn this thing. Too much tapping. Okay, so we're going to put our bearing race back in here. Make sure that is down, nice and flush. Very good. Now the tilt spring goes back in. Excuse me, this is going to be difficult to film because you need some pressure on this spring to get this thing in. There it is. Locked in place. Now we move on to the column housing cover end cap. Say that 3 times fast. Column housing cover end cap. All right, so you can see how it rides in this slot, and then the end of this bad boy has to make contact with this rod right here, which is going to give you your high-low on your headlights. So if you don't have that correct, you need to make sure before you move any farther, because before you put the housing cover back on, you want to make sure that this is correct. So what I'm going to do is just press this on here with my hand and then hold that in place where it should be. Now this is how it sits in the pocket when the rest of the housing goes on. So now with it like this, what I can do is I can just use my thumb pressure here and I can check to make sure that I got the high-low beam switch clicking. And if I don't, then I need to find out why and make that right. So now, with that in place where it's supposed to be, we can bring up our column housing cover and then get this thing lined up and back in. There is a pin in here that has to go. This is your locking pin. There it is. There it is. Okay, so now that's in place. With it in place, we've got our stalk right here. Just going to hold this pressure with my hand. I'm actually going to check this, make sure that we still have the same engagement. And if we don't, we need to make sure that we do. There it is. All right. Now we can go ahead and add our bolts back. So that's our 3 bolts back in. We're going to go ahead and put our outer race bearing cap back in place. It's going to hold that there. And we're going to move on to our ignition switch. Now this is a perfect time before you bolt it up. Check it one last time. Make sure that everything is correct. So this should line up with your off. Then you should be able to click it. There's run, start, back to off. Beautiful. And you can see this pin coming out. I don't know if you can see that, but it's in the recess now. As soon as I turn it to off, pops out. That's what that locking plate grabs onto. That's what keeps your steering wheel where it's supposed to. So now we can go ahead and put this in for good. So now with the cylinder bolted up, you can see right in here, you can see that little green tab is hanging down. You see that? I think you can. All right, so what we need to do is, that needs to be held up in order for us to get the chime switch and the little clip in with it. So what I found is if you turn it to the run position, sometimes you can get this thing pushed up and it'll stay in that position. Now we can come in with our switch push the whole thing in as a unit. Nothing should hold it up. There, in place. So now we move on to getting our turn signal switch back in. Let's not forget our hidden friend up here. This little guy, our little arm, should find its way. Usually you can kind of just throw this thing in and you feel it pop into place. But you really can't see where it's at in there. There it is. So we'll screw this down, and then we're going to check. Make sure our function is correct. Yep. We move on to replacing those springs. Because these little guys, like I told you earlier, break. Nobody likes broken springs. Nobody likes going back into a car and doing the same job again a second time. No one. All right, these springs are specific left to right, so make sure you've got the right one. It goes in that hole and pop that into the slot. Just that simple. Now let's do the other side. Get that little mouster out of there. Get our brand new one in. Swing it over into the groove. Now, much better. I know this thing is going to function correctly now when we get it back together. And there's going to be not one single issue. From this point on, it's basically doing the opposite of what you did when you took it apart. So all the little things that you may run into, I think I've shown you all of those. And now it's just a matter of putting the parts back on. So I think now would be a good time. And 69 Herstols, this is for you. Cue the music. That's the entire thing, start to finish.